Hi, everybody. Welcome to La Lista, a LatinX writers podcast. My name is Ruben Mendive. I am your host, and today I have another great writer for you guys. I always start with my guests introducing themselves. So, sort of who you are, where you're from, how you identify, just so people can get a sense of your voice, and you can start us off.
All right, good. So I'm Gabriel Brugni. I'm film and TV writer, originally from Brazil. I lived most of my life there, grew up there, got mugged there. Actually, so many times I got to know one of my muggers by name.
Okay.
And I began my screenwriting career there. I was writing for this. I wrote for this like nonfiction show that got an international Emmy nomination a few years ago. Then I wrote this co-production with I think Canada, maybe the U.S. Too. And then I decided that like I wanted to teach for a living. I would get a master's program, so I came here to USC and then ended up staying, and that's like basically my life.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll get deep. So I always ask my first question. You already sort of answered this. So where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in a small town in the state of Bahia in Brazil, a small town called Valença. And I lived there up until I was like 6 or so. And then I moved to Bahia's capital, Salvador, and which is where I spent most of my life, basically. I think about like until I think I moved out in my early 20s.
Oh, okay.
Then I moved out from there, and then I went to Rio de Janeiro, which is basically where like everyone
it's a
else
big city.
gets to like start relating.
Yeah.
Because I'm like Bahia, and they're like, no, Valença, no, let's not even try Valença.
But how would you describe, your childhood, like town, city, like?
It is, when I picture it, it's a very, I think, unique picture to bring to, especially like an American eye, because our towns are not structured in the same way. Valença was this like smallish, in that sense that like that you know everybody, but not the romantic like everybody knows everybody kind of way. More like you have heard of like you know how to like base or like locate yourself, like you know where you are. And because I moved out really early, like 6 years old, you don't have many, you don't keep a lot of memories when you're 6. But what I remember was that, so when I was born, my parents are both doctors, so I'm kind of like the black sheep running away from like all those like real life stuff. But I remember that in the beginning, we used to live in the back of our clinic. There was like this small, like a narrow street, like cobblestone street. There was this like a newsstand like right across the street. And I remember that when I was like around maybe like 5 or so, by the time kids here are like beginning to read and write, etc. I got my first girlfriend, or so I said. And it's fun because this girl was actually the daughter of the guy in the nightstand, in the newsstand.
Got it. Okay, cool.
And like every once in a while, like when we would like drive back to Valença, we would stop by, oh, that was like the place. Like we ended up like knowing people, like like we moved at some point later. And I think this can give you like a picture of the town, especially when I say that in Brazil, for example, there's less mediation between let's say man-made stuff and nature. Things overlap a little bit more, not in the sense that please we don't live in jungles, but things do have this like they do like encroach one another. And I used to play soccer with like some friends in the neighborhood. In this field, there was actually like a vacant lot on the other side of the street, and it was actually like this very like almost like swampy field. And I remember there were even like some sometimes like cattle grazing in there. It's like kind of if you picture like those small Mexican towns that you see probably in the movie where some probably like Liam Neeson is finding like someone from his family that they kidnapped.
He's always looking.
Yeah. It's always like a small town. So it's probably like one of those towns.
You mentioned that you had a childhood mugger.
Yes, I mean, not a childhood. I was like more like a teenage.
Yeah.
Bahia. If you Google Bahia, you probably learn two things about it. One, carnival. We have the biggest street carnival in the world. Probably it used to draw over like 2 million people to the city. So that's like how kind of big it was.
Yeah.
And also the beaches. It's really like it's a coastal state and has like warm waters. It's really like a paradise. It's a perfect place to go especially like if you're looking for like a vacation with like your family, or even if like you want to party. There are places there, and it's very warm up like year round. What people generally don't know about Bahia is that, and this especially in Brazil, there's a third thing that Brazilians will most likely know. Bahia has a reputation of being a very laid-back state. A very like people from Bahia are regarded as they love party. They're always nice. They always like invite you over when you just met them, and it's always this kind of like this vacation place in a way. Bahia can get pretty violent. And when like growing up there, between like I think being maybe 8 to my 20s, I used to get mugged a lot. Like people would go for my wallet, go for my watch, and there was this one guy, and here's the one weird thing about muggers, and I probably have like one supernatural like magnet for weird muggers because there's always something like off about them. This one guy tried to get my phone. The only problem was I didn't have a phone. I never had a phone.
Yeah.
Like a cell phone. I had to tell him like, hey, do you see any phone? This other guy tried to mug me for and then he asked for 60 cents.
Okay.
This other one tried to mug me for, let's say, the equivalent of $2. And then he realized I had $20 in my wallet. And then we started an argument in the middle of the street about ethics or robbery, because my point was if he had asked for $2, then my only responsibility was to give him $2. He should have asked for more if he wanted more money. Okay. So he would only take his $2 and that's it.
And how do you handle that?
I mean, at the end of the day, he kind of thanked me.
Okay.
Because he kind of people also do these things there. Sometimes they stick their a finger like under the shirt to pretend they have a knife. This guy had a pretty fat finger, so it was clearly that wasn't a knife. No, we're gonna have this argument here.
Yeah, and so what was it like going to school and growing up in this laid back town, but it's also got a little crime and who were you and all that?
Tough question, because there's a little bit to unpack. In a way, because all of that shapes what I bring, I think, as a writer, or the stories that I tell.
Yeah.
Because in a way, growing up with this kind of told me that it was natural for these things to happen. It is okay to get mugged. It happens that you get mugged. It happens that you need to be careful when you're walking on the streets, that you need to watch your back, that you need to it's okay it's normal not to feel safe. And that was a big change, like coming here, realizing like how much people how much people demanded safety.
Yes.
It's like, it almost feels like entitlement in a way.
Yeah, we love to feel safe. We love a police. We love punishment. We love, laws and order.
And, and the other thing was that one of the reasons I also used to get mugged all the time is that I never, let's add quote unquote here, looked like someone from Bahia. Bahia as a state, and especially Salvador, where I used to live as a city, was a big port for African slaves when Brazil had the slavery system. To this day, even because there's something in Brazil history, Brazil tried to whitewash its history, actually tried to bring more white people in.
Oh wow!
But even then, to this day, Bahia has Salvador has about 70% of Afro-Brazilian population, especially in Brazil. That makes me look pretty much gringo.
Yeah.
Even fun fact, it took me getting here to learn I was not blonde. Because this, in Brazil, we say this person is blonde.
And for the record, for the audience at home who can't see you, your hair is not blonde.
That blows my mind, really.
Yeah. And it still seems strange to you? Or is it an adjustment? Or
because that was one of the first things I learned here, it doesn't feel strange anymore. Because I've been living here for 6 years now. So it doesn't, but other stuff I still do feel strange. Maybe I can, I was never, the people always look at me and think, and if you're a gringo, the assumption is you have money, and I'm going after that person.
Yeah.
And for the record, because I think sometimes gringo has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
When I say
I think it depends on the person or how sensitive they are.
I'll just say for us here and for everyone listening to this podcast that bear with me if I use this word often, because it does not have this connotation in Brazil. It's more when we say gringo, we're basically talking about tourists from either Europe or the US.
Yeah, so that's interesting that and living in a state with predominantly Afro-Brazilians, you are sort of singled out.
I had people stop me in the street and speak English with me.
Yeah.
Once I had I think someone gave me a jersey from Rome, the Italian team, soccer team, Rome. Yeah. Someone spoke Italian with me on the street. I'm like, why?
Yeah. And so how did you what did you think of that at the time? People in the state thinking you're not from there, tourists thinking that you're one of them. And you knowing that you're, a Brazilian, and what does that do to you? How do you feel about that?
Here's the point. It got to a point where at a certain stage I didn't know anymore. That I really had to kind of find my place in the world, because I remember feeling that. Maybe I really don't belong here, in a sense that maybe there's a place where I will feel more like everybody else in a way. And it's funny because a good part of my life was actually looking for that place. I remember that, so I was born 100% Brazilian, but I now hold Brazilian and Italian citizenships. Reason being, my great-grandparents were Italian. When they migrated to Brazil, they let go of their Italian citizenship. They became Brazilians, and for some reason, and they were able to get this back. And then by the time I got this back, I started thinking, maybe then I am more Italian than I am Brazilian.
Yeah.
Let me find out. And then when I was in my, I think maybe 20 or 19, I went to Italy. And then when I went to Italy, people thought I was from Romania.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I give up.
Yeah.
There's this thing then when I moved to Rio de Janeiro, people in Rio would look at me. I'm like far wider than the average person from Bahia. And I would say like, oh, I'm from Bahia. And they would go like, no, you are not.
Yeah.
And that would be infuriating.
Yeah.
The weird thing is that then I feel really at home in the US because here I don't have anyone to tell me what I'm not. Like I can say to people, hey, I'm Brazilian. They're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like I'm from Bahia, fine.
Yeah. And our identity, I was just listening to something else where they say, we have our identity and then there's the identity projected onto us. And then there's the identity we create to sort of assimilate into, or like to make ourselves appropriate in the larger culture.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what you were doing, thinking I'm Brazilian, and then going to like Rio de Janeiro, and they're saying well, even in your home state, people being like, well, you're a tourist or you're a gringo, and then going to another city and then they're telling you like, no, you're not from there, and then you being like, okay, fine, then I won't be from there. Like, and then the difference to the US where people are like, oh, okay, like we acknowledge your identity and how living in different places can like sort of.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not because like when people in the US acknowledge my identity, I don't think it is because like, Americans are so schooled in identity issues. It's more than just like they just don't have all this exposure to some of Brazilian, like let's say identity landmarks, to be able to counter saying, oh, you don't look like that person, etc.
Yeah, because we don't know the history. Like I don't know really the history of Brazil. I know that there's like Afro-Brazilians. I know that there's like Portuguese colonizers. But I can't tell you what a Brazilian is supposed to look like. I only what I glean from the media and sort of like, but I don't know like the history, the racial aspect, like what makes that up. So yeah, like that's why it's a lot easier because we don't really know what to compare it to, because even within Brazil, your identity and your ethnicity and skin color can be a whole different thing within the country.
Yeah, that's true. And I think one of the weird things that I had to juggle coming here was that my identity, especially when it comes to ethnicity, to race, the way we see ethnicity and race in Brazil is different from the way people see it here. For example, I would think I'd consider myself blonde. One other thing I've always considered myself was white. I'm white.
Yeah.
Then I learned that to some people here, I'm not. And that was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the issue with identity in Brazil was in part this guy is too white.
Yeah.
And then I get here and oh no, we have questions about that.
Yeah.
A minority, being Latino, is not equivalent of being people of color, of being a person of color.
Yeah.
Because
someone was just explaining this to me.
Yeah, you can I can be Latino, but I can totally pass it as white. Now, I mean, according to the person who's watching me, but but I do reap the benefits of white privilege, and a lot of other Latinos don't. So I think it's good to differentiate this, especially when people think politics for for Latinos, because it may be going to there may be some waste in there. People can be more precise, and those policies can be more effective.
Yeah, that speaks to the Latinx vote, how it can be divided within different party, because if you see yourself as white, if you don't see the policies harming Latinx people that would harm, you don't see those policies harming you, then you have no problem voting for a certain political party, because to you that is such a separate issue and you're benefiting from that because either knowingly or unknowingly you are part of the system and you're benefiting and contributing to
I mean, you'll still definitely should care that policy affects other people, but like you shouldn't benefit from a policy that's aimed at like correcting something that targets a person of color.
Yeah.
If you don't,
Yeah. So I want to talk about, your move to the big city, Rio de Janeiro. Like, what prompted that move? Like, what were you up to? What was the plan,
Let me just say, so people in Salvador don't kill me, Salvador is also a big city.
Okay.
It's also a metropolis, but Rio in this sense is bigger, and this is a big city in the sense of the area I work, and because Rio is considered, I think now, like together with São Paulo, Rio and São Paulo are two of Brazil's film and TV capitals. People don't really do like film and TV in Salvador. I mean, they do, but the industry is like, think the industry of like a Georgia or like Florida or something like that. It's not as robust. And when I was going to went to university, I first went to law school and then I quit.
Why did you want to do law school?
Because my parents didn't let me go to linguistics.
Got it.
You hear that, parents? I still remember it. I wanted to wanted to study like linguistics. It's awesome, and I love like learning about like languages and etc. Like how they work. I will do this. It was out of the state, and then my parents were like, nope. And okay, so what's your next option? I didn't really have a next option, so let me figure out. Okay, law school. It was not what I thought it would be, and after like about the second year, I started thinking of like, oh, I'm gonna quit this. What do I really like to do? And I doing this kind of like soul search, and I remembered that I really like telling stories. That like in class when we're not like paying attention, we would like write X-Files like parodies and etc. And then I started studying for journalism, but just because like the journalism school in in Salvador, there was one school there that actually had a bunch of people that actually wanted to do film and TV, but just kind of like weren't like brave enough to not have a diploma. So I didn't get in, ended up doing advertising. And at some point there was an internship at Globo, the Brazilian TV. And it required it was in Rio de Janeiro. So then I applied and I got a job, I got this internship. And then I moved to Rio. In Rio is as then that I started just getting to know people and getting myself in this area. It's how I actually started working with screenwriting.
Did you always have like a passion for writing? Did you have like underlying dreams of like writing for film and TV while you were growing up, or throughout this whole area of switching majors and careers?
Not necessarily. What I realized is that I had a passion for telling stories. And it never, it didn't occur to me that would be in film and TV necessarily. I just knew that it wasn't in literature.
Okay.
Because there was this whole thing, I think it's related to the education we received, but there's this whole thing like intellectual about literature that I didn't feel that I was like up to the task. Like, oh, well, I'll never do this. I'm not like smart enough to write a book, to engage language in a way that I see people talking about language besides talking about the story. I just wanted like the raw story, and that's it. And then that kind of like took me towards film and TV, and like that was it.
So what was the next steps to that? You knew you were in the right path now. You knew what you wanted to sort of pursue. So like, what was I always ask people, what was the plan? Like, what were you aiming towards? What were you moving towards?
The plan was finding a way to make money with that.
Got it. That's important.
And I think that's always like the plan. How do I make money with this? Yes. It was hard in Brazil at the time because we had a very it was just very like, it was still growing.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. So there wasn't much of a demand for writers. There was even a thing that like Brazil had a pretty much like auteur heavy tradition. And one of the consequences of that is that they don't really wouldn't really see screenwriters in a good light. Screenwriters would be like those people, from Hollywood doing we call them those canned movies that we're gonna watch like dubbed in the afternoon, etc. It takes a magic from the whole thing that's supposed to be, intellectual, and you authors should be starving to death in the meantime. But things started changing a little bit, and the plan was just like, how do we like get together and do this? So it ended up with I got together with some other classmates, and we created a company in Brazil. It's kind of like a production company, but we only work with screenwriting. We work for hire, or we develop original content.
Got it.
And we got together, we created this company called Maquinário Narrativo. From there, we started like getting our names out, because the thing is, in Brazil, there are no agents or managers for film and TV like we have here. So it's basically you fend for yourself.
Yeah.
And it was better as inexperienced writers to fend for ourselves in group under a same flag than doing it like all scattered, etc. And that was great. That provided us with a lot of like support from each other to like start doing this. Remember that thing that I said on the beginning, like I wanted to teach. I wanted like a side job in a way to also compensate for this ups and downs of writing, especially like in a country
supplement your income.
Yeah, and like especially because in Brazil, like you may have a paycheck from this here, but you don't know when the next one is coming. And well, here too, but there's like that could be hard. It's like, oh, I want the supplemental income. They needed they needed a master's degree, and like, where am I going to get this master's degree? Oh, USC. That cuts to like that. That's how I came here.
Yeah.
But that was the plan there. Then when I came here, it was like a whole other story. What's the plan here? Like, what can I do here with this? Can I use anything of what like I learned there, of what I built there as a career here? And that was a whole other story.
So that's interesting. So you were working. You had this company, you had all these writers, if you want like to work with a writer, come to us. Like we've got like some people we're working on stuff. Like
the way to think of it is basically think of a writing group that really goes pro. It's I think it's the closest, the best way to compare this in the situation. But in Brazil specifically, since people had no way of knowing like getting to know other writers, like how I'm gonna know like where the writers are, it's easy to do that if there's a company doing this, and they can go to that company, and that company has like 5 other writers that they can actually get to know. And
so you wanted to, in a way to supplement your income, get it like a teaching degree, or get a master's degree, so then you could teach. So then you come to USC,
and then it's a whole thing, that irony of all things, that like when I came to USC, Brazilian industry in film and TV skyrocketed. Really,
yeah, that's funny.
And then like when like people started getting a lot of work, and things started really happening. And then here like, good job, guys.
So what were you? Well, a couple questions. Why did you pick USC, and what were you studying at USC?
I was studying. It was a master's in writing for screen and TV. I picked USC because I wanted to first of all, because I knew like the rank, and I knew the position. I knew it was a really good university, a really good school, and like, okay, I want to learn for a really good school. Actually, a fun fact. I also wanted, I wanted to see the market from up close. I wanted to be next to it to see how it worked. And I think this was a major reason, especially because naive me, before coming to USC, I remember talking with a friend that also came to USC with me, and we're like, okay, but we're going to USC only because we want the experience and the diploma, right? Because we know how to write already.
Okay.
That was naive.
Yeah.
That was so naive.
And moving to a whole different country is kind of a big deal, It's like, well, what were you, had you been to the U.S. before? Did you have impressions of it? Like, because this is like, it sounds like a huge culture
My God,
change.
this is so on spot. We could do like a podcast series on this, because really there's let me just say that there's like the stereotypes and etc. They go both ways. Like Brazil gets some, but you guys here in the US get some too.
I'm already cringing.
And sometimes it's just that it makes your life harder because the stereotype. It's misleading because you think you know this place and you don't.
Yeah.
And we get here, we know the US already. Like, I'm going to be there and like Harrison Ford's going to be like shoving, like saving the world or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not the way like we see stuff. But it was less scary at first because at first it wasn't a permanent decision. Mm-hmm. At first it was something like, I'm going to go there, get this diploma and go back. Mm-hmm. And when I came here, I realized this thing of like being, I feel so much more comfortable here, like so much more at home here, not having to defend my identity all the time. I actually like this place.
Okay, interesting. That's.
It's not that I was accepted as one of like their own. I wasn't. I am still not.
Oh yeah.
But I'm accepted in the place that I put myself.
Oh yeah, and that's real. Like.
Yeah.
To sort of be somewhere and it feels comfortable.
Like, I don't have to defend who I am here.
Yeah.
When, like, instead, if I go to Brazil, I would have to be doing that, like, on a, I'm not going to say daily basis, but pretty often. Yeah.
And so, talk about USC. What was your experience there?
It is, let's set aside all the scandals now and talk technically. It is a great school. It was a great experience. And it is so... to me, like specifically, was pretty much like an eye-opening journey. Not only to, I think of USC, my passage through USC, almost like a coming of age story, in a sense that I kind of learned how to write my own story there. And I think this is another thing because we started our careers in Brazil right in like from the get-go in doing it professionally, and nobody was buying original content. We never really needed to write any original content. We only wrote what people asked us to write.
Interesting.
So our range would go from like writing a documentary to writing a comedy to writing a drama. It depends on who's asking for you. That's great because that gives you a lot of like instruments to work with all these genres, but we never had to like question ourselves like, what do we write?
Yeah, you're not developing your own voice.
Yeah, and the funny thing was that before USC, I used to think of myself as a comedy writer. Because I would like make jokes all the time, like I would write like funny stuff and people would laugh and like, okay, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm a comedy writer. But like once I started like really looking at the stories, like I would say, oh no, those are actually dramas. Once I get like close enough, I don't think these stories are funny or they're like funny things to tell about them.
And so when did the plan go from, I'm going to come here, grab my master's degree, go back to Brazil? Like, when did it become, I think I'm staying here?
Because there's this one thing that they say, especially like in Brazil, given the circumstances, like now of our industry now, that's like, you can go to the US and like be a struggling writer, or you can come back and and actually like get stuff done, get your name together. And I remember the feeling, a little bit like a feeling of dread of going back. I remember thinking and feeling that, okay, that I know that this would be the best professional choice, but I know that if I do this, I will not be happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's when things started to change.
Yeah, and I think that's a very real feeling for anyone that moves to LA to be a writer, because if you want to do anything else, you would be doing it, and you're here because you've been called here to like work and have your dreams come true, and know in your gut that if you weren't here, you'd be regretting it. You know?
Yeah, but here's the point: it's not that I would be regretting it in a professional level. Like it's kind of like almost the opposite, because in a professional level, I should have returned. Because like when I see friends that like return, they're like, "Oh, I'm running my own show now," and it's like, holy shit. But I wouldn't be like happy in a personal level. I'd be miserable there.
And why do you say that?
Because it's funny. I don't actually. Now that you asked this, I realize that I'm not one to think that microaggressions should actually shape major life decisions.
Okay.
In this, especially because they're microaggression, there's something that like that they annoy you. That you were supposed to, get by anyway. Like deal with them in a non-Republican way of saying, and get on with your life and focus on the major issues like at hand and at your life and etc. But now that I realize they really played a big role in my decision to stay. Yeah. Because those things build.
Yeah, they do.
And then I went back to Brazil many times, and it's like, it's awesome. It's always like great, and especially like there's so many lifestyles choice that people do there that they should do here. That things would be much better if like people just like went out to get a beer after work. Like just like walking every day, but those things like are great. But then every day you get like 1 inch of this, like 1 drop of that. End of the day, like in the end of like the year, you realize you're cursing this or cursing that or etc.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And here's the point. That's specifically, I think I think that works for me, especially for all this like the things I said before, because for a lot of people it's actually the best decision that they can make. Like they're happy there, they that they have their lives there and it's what works for them. So by all means, go back. Yeah,
that's such an interesting decision. Just because I don't even know if I could relate it to anything of my own experiences, just in the sense that it really is interesting to me, because you as a Brazilian in your own country are constantly being told who you are, who you're not, who you're supposed to be, and to the point where you're just like, can I just be like comfortably me where I am in my space? And Brazil wasn't that for you, and you found that
it's like,
LA
can I
was.
just not have to defend that, like, who I am or what. There was this, for instance, what is said about Bahia. That like all these beaches and like all the parties and etc. And it is great that like people have those things to say, but also when you say that all the time, it creates the impression that you live in a vacation destination. And there's so much to it that people really don't see, and that makes you a person from Bahia that they don't see, and it seems that they're not equipped to realize. And I think that's actually one. We're talking earlier about like how we need like gatekeepers to also have like a better like representation. Because when people if they expect to put you in this box, and you bring like the original, an original voice, saying something that's outside of this box, and people are not gonna put you there, there's a problem.
Yeah. Then they're trying to mold you into the box that of what they expect and what they know.
That's what they expect. That should be.
So I think that's actually super interesting. That you in the U.S. can be in your full Brazilian identity, and it's not being questioned, and then you're like, oh, thank God, like I can finally breathe. I don't have to like argue with people and like defend who I am as a Brazilian person.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. I'm trying to figure out how I would do that, but I don't. But it does speak. It's like the same thing, when people are like, there's such a like old like just scenario in the U.S. Like when you move to a new high school, you can be anyone. So you can leave all the baggage, you can leave everything anybody else thought of you, and you could be there and be like, this is who I am. And people are like, okay, if you're coming to us with that right off the bat, that's what we're gonna go with,
Yeah.
And that's sort of what you did. And that's interesting. I don't think I've had someone really, talk in that sense. It must be freeing.
It is. It is freeing. It is a lot. Like it's freeing, but like a really good amount of like of freeingness.
Yeah.
But it is also. It's also kind of permanent reminder that you, in a way, don't fit, because the more like you, it creates a kind of an echo. Like you get used to like being, let's say, called out on what your identity was supposed to be, and then now you suddenly aren't, and it creates this funny echo that at some point you get kind of like bored or upset that people are not calling you out on your on what your identity was supposed to be. Okay, now you're supposed to say I don't look Brazilian. Please say I don't look Brazilian so I can be angry at you. Like,
man, if at any point I could, because you're right. Like this is the struggle of a lot of Latinx people. Of they're constantly being told they're not enough of this, enough of that, and we carry it with you. It's half the topic of this podcast for a lot of people.
Yeah,
and it's crazy, and that's why when you found a place where you didn't have to do that, you were like, of course I'll stay here. Like I don't have to carry any of that crap anymore. Like,
and it's not to say that like I left Brazil with an identity and I just like brought that identity here and I'm living with it.
Yeah.
I had to like adapt. I had to adjust. I built a new identity here, but I built it on top of the one that I knew how to carry. And on that building new identity, this thing about topics that cross the whole LatinX spectrum is this thing of what it actually means to be Latino.
Yeah.
Like that thing that I was talking earlier, there was this question that I needed to answer for myself that was like, are Brazilians Latino? And am I Latino?
Yeah.
I remember the moment where when it clicked that I was actually.
Yeah.
Because I was in Mexico City, I think, with my family, and I would probably tell some part of this story because it's Mexican history. I probably tell it wrong. I think maybe we can like correct that at some point, or someone will just like comment the right version. Yeah. But in Mexico City, we were in the city tour, and someone was talking about this station called Niños Heróis, or like Hero Kids. And the story, as it goes, is that when the U.S. Mexican War was happening, American troops were getting close to this Mexican, I think, castle or fortress that was guarded only by this bunch of kids. And those kids, seeing that they wouldn't stand a chance against the American forces, they killed themselves by jumping off a window or something. And then they thus became heroes, and then hero kids, Niños Heróis. And the tour guide made this a kind of a joke, saying that, we like our heroes are like the losers. And then that clicked, because that's also like, I was like, this is like as a Latin American from top to bottom. our heroes are losers.
Yeah.
Do you know? I think how they call it, Chavo. That's Mexican sitcom. The guy lives in they have this. The actor was Roberto Bolaños. He passed away a few years ago. It was really popular, I think, especially like in Latin America. Not sure if it's in Mexico so much, but it was really popular in Brazil. And they had like a superhero that was called, I think, the Chapulin.
Yeah.
What we call Chapulin there. And if you think of this guy is a failure. Like, he only saves the day by accident, and when he tries to do something, he actually fails at it. And that's like 100% like our heroes, not only for like what happened to us as history, how our like, how our attempts to take our own destiny by with our hands failed and etc. But also what we do as a culture, what we believe happens when you actually stand for something that's right and etc. And like, oh, this is like who we are.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I can see now we may not like look alike. We may not speak the same language. We may not like have the same, let's say, newspaper traditions of what you can find on a Sunday, etc. But this is what makes us like,
like,
it's kind of one people.
Yeah, that's a shared identity of like, being a colonized people.
Yeah.
And then how we, like our heroes, our history is sort of spoken through the resiliency of the people that like fought these like invading forces who tried to like maintain their identity. And now, we're like a mishmash of both. Our, like the language we speak, our religion, the color of our skin is like a result of that conflict, of that initial loss of like maybe indigenous identity and culture to this new colonized culture. And
yes, and I think it gets to be a little different also that when it comes to American Latinos, like to American born Latinos, because there's a lot of culture that you just get from the US here that is shaped and like told differently.
Yeah.
And I think that informs like some worldviews that get to be different from like Latin America.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think this is changing now, but for a lot of the time, the goal for immigrants and like Latinx people coming to this country and growing up in this country was to assimilate. Was to blend into the dominant culture, to like, speak like the language properly and no accents, and to be passable, and that's sort of where like I was talking about like our proximity started to like merge, because we saw that as the American ideal, but this American ideal was shaped by a certain kind of people.
Yes,
and it's crazy that then we're born here, so we're like, oh, I should be like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about, you did at USC, you've decided to stay. Like, what came next?
First there was a hell of a immigration hurdle. Because
so talk about that from like the Brazilian perspective, because you were on a student visa. I
was on a student visa, and then basically what happens when you're on a student visa is that after your program ends, you can opt for like a training period of 1 extra year.
Okay.
And after that, that's it. You need to get your next visa.
Got it. Oh, okay. So ideally in that time you would get a job, and then you would have like a work visa, or...
Yes, but it depends. Your area kind of influences what kind of visa you're going to get.
Okay.
For example, as a writer...
okay. So it's like career specific.
A little bit, like, because there's the H visa, which one tech companies use. It's people are talking about it because the whole like tech company thing.
Yeah, like high skilled workers, like
There's one that's called like aliens of extraordinary abilities.
Melania Trump got that one.
Yes, that's the one.
Her modeling abilities.
Well. Apparently, like I'm super extraordinary. And,
so that's the one you got.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So talk superpower.
So talk about that process. Because I know that there's Melania Trump has it, but I don't know that much about that visa. Like.
So the process is basically like that you need to have something to do here. Mm-hmm. That's one leg of the visa. And the other leg is you need to establish that you had a career before, like a good career, like somewhere else.
That you would be contributing to our grander American culture and country.
Yes. And
I'm saying that sarcastically.
Like at that moment, I felt really lucky that I already had been working as a writer in Brazil.
Yeah.
Because I had like in those, I don't know how many like years, but I had written stuff for like brands like, I don't know, Nestle and like the central bank. And there was like a lot of stuff that we like that I could show to like, hey, there's a career. There was like an international Emmy nomination in one of the shows. Like, hey, this is something. This matters. But a lot of my my work, especially because graduating in advertising, etc., was with brands, was with short-term, like short videos. And when you're in the O1, you need to prove the criteria of admission. Like that, the job was for a big company, that you had like a lead position, and you need to prove that per project. And then I suddenly had like about 30 to 50 projects to gather all that information. Like this and blah, 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 and then translate. And then,
the system is built not to make it that easy. Like
this took me about a year.
Oh, God.
A little more. I remember that my petition, the one that I sent, had about 2,000 pages in 4 binders.
Oh my God.
Because it was like, you need to do it.
And did you have like lawyers also looking at this stuff? Like,
yes,
helping you with the process? I'm sure that.
Yes, telling me like, okay, this is what you have to do.
And that's not free. Like, you have to pay for that. Like.
Yeah. And then after you get that, then finally you can like, you can get to work here. And then there's the thing that was like I think the biggest professional, challenge that I had to overcome, or to like, I'll even say like professional inquietude that I had to peacify. There was like, what do I do with 2 careers? Like, how can I have one career here and one in Brazil? And is there any way I can use one to the benefit of the other? A lot of people were actually telling me like, hey, unless, you are like let's say an Oscar-winning top of everything, people are not going to care for what you do in Brazil. Just like let that go and focus here. And that was really hard because it, in a way, like my professional identity is there.
Yeah, and the slate sort of gets wiped clean.
Yeah.
Which is a very common immigrant experience.
Yeah, because there's this thing that what you create is tied to like where you are. It's tied to your contest.
Yeah.
All information I had like were from like was from Brazil. Like everything I create like will resonate more like there like first, and then I can bring, and then like I can use it here. I can translate it to here. And that was a big a big like uphill effort, and I think it's finally paying off a bit, because one of the things was like people are saying like, you need to quit the company, like just let it go, etc. And at some point I decided that okay, I'm not gonna do this. And because I had this whole thing here at USC, I will kind of have a creative development lab in the company. And then I will like workshop stories with like my partners, so we can actually take this stories out and see how it like where that goes. And this, mind you, this was all like for free, and it was all time consuming, because then I had like 5 scripts to like, consult with every week and etc. It was kind of a heavy toll. Like, what do I do with this? Where does this go in? And finally, like last year, like one of the scripts we wrote sold to like one of the producers, like call me by your name, and it was like, whoa,
yeah,
suddenly this thing really paid off. It worked. It kind of opened doors where like it wouldn't like have happened before. And kind of now it's much easier to see how things are interconnected. How like it is possible to like things are more global than we tend to think they are.
Yeah. So I do want to get into like the sort of what are the sort of stories you write? What do you see the similar themes that keep coming up? How do you really identify the stories you're trying to tell?
Yeah. What I do write that I notice that I do all the time is basically is about this quests of like characters trying to find like love and wonder in these sometimes strange, sometimes inhospitable, sometimes dangerous places.
Got it.
And it is about this trying to like find a light in hard circumstances. And that's generally what like all my characters are like up to. And those things take the form of dramas, many times family dramas. And I do have a strong connection with, I would say, with reality and with history, in the sense that a lot of my stories come from like either historical events or and not historical events in the sense of like this was the war of like independence or etc. But like things that inform us of like where we are now and like in how these things happened before. Because especially one of the things that I try to do in my writing is try to create a world in another kind of logic as possible. And that kind of relates to my experience moving to the US and having to balance this, what I thought America would be and what America really is. And there's a lot of this, how you need to think differently, how something that was obvious to you and seem like even like right or like good to you doesn't necessarily mean the same for somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a thing that if I think that if I'm able to produce that kind of insight, of that, that kind of result to make you see something that you wouldn't have seen before through my stories, that is something that's like that's good to achieve.
And I think a lot of writers sort of have that at their core of their writing. They sort of want to convey the humanity of someone else and their experience and sort of how it's like is a result of like like the history and their environment and really trying to get into the truth of that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes what I think is really interesting when we go to like to tell other people's stories and other stories from other times is to show how people have thought differently. And because here's one thing that ties everything together. I do think that like to be truly living in a place, you need to know that place. That no two places are like, what's the word? Exchangeable.
Yeah. I do want to ask, like, how have you found, LA to be in regards to community and other writers? Have you found, other Brazilian writers? Have you found other Latinx writers or just writers that you are able to, be friends with, collaborate with, sort of like get to know?
Yeah. And the fun thing about this is that I've been able to find like a lot of writers, not only like Brazilian writers or Latinx writers, but also like writers that are not from my same ethnicity. Let's say that, because what brings us together is what is relatable in our stories.
Yeah.
And it is tricky though, that you do get a lot of that competition that we're talking earlier. There's this sense of you can't support another person because that will take something from you.
Yes.
And that that part sucks. You get to see that a lot. And I think that over this this journey, these years here, what I noticed was that people who I would click with, who I would like develop friendships with, I may not have like been around them all the time, but like I knew who those people were from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of this, try to like get everybody together, like get this random group together, and then see if something goes from there. But then you realize that, it doesn't really go, and you get to be in this like shitty limbo. Where like you are in that place, like you're trying to do things, but you also feel you don't have like an entire support, and then what do you do? And I think over time my like decision was just quit.
Yeah, because I think that's starting to change, but I think for so long, we as writers feel like we're the only ones going through it, and there's only one slot for us. In different places and different rooms at different tables, so that we're in competition with each other for it, and it's not. Again, that is a symptom of the structure that exists.
Yes, there's also another thing to that is to know how to collaborate.
Yes.
You can be like the greatest person ever. Like fun to be with, and etc. But if you don't know what to bring to the table, to your friend, or how to help your friend, then maybe you're a good drinking buddy, but not a good writing buddy.
Yeah, and that's real. It's because like even like your regular friends that you hang out with, maybe you wouldn't work with them at an office every day. Maybe you wouldn't mesh that way.
Yeah. But this is not something that's like necessarily, let's say, clickable or like absolute in the sense, this person doesn't have that, so I won't be dealing with this person. It's more like this is something that you develop. It's almost like it's an ability that you develop, and that you need to be open to develop it.
Yeah.
If you're focused only on yourself, you're not going to be able to reach out to another person, help other person.
Yeah, and I think it is tricky for writers because our identity as writers is very intertwined with who we feel we are, like our personhood. So, and even how we relate to each other, how we interact, how our relationships develop. Like your friends that are writers, you are communicating and you're moving in similar spaces, and it can get tricky and it doesn't seem very much. There's like no like work or friend divide. It's it's all sort of like in there.
Yeah, I think this is probably the shittiest part of like the let's say the professional relationships. Here I see this this note a lot, for example, like don't make contacts, make friends. This is not how life works. Like you don't pursue like a friendship, like I'm gonna make a friend today. No. And this is the point. Wait a second. If you're saying like don't make contacts, make friends, but you're saying that you need to make friends in that area. That's a kind of very narrow, target to make your friends.
Yeah,
I'm gonna make friends, but only if they're writers.
Yeah, yeah. That's crazy because you have friends, people you get along with. Then career-wise, they're doing something, and then it gets like this is something I struggle with a lot because and people have talked to me about this in the sense that I'm like, I will always be friends first. Like I'm never going to be friendly with somebody that I don't think I have that in common with, just in the sense for connections.
Yeah.
But it is like, but then when you do have people that are friends, I feel weird to be like, oh, you have a connection. Like, hey, I'm your friend. Can we help each other out just because we're friends? Because then that also feels a weird area for me.
And I think that depends on your relationship, especially. Yeah. Maybe there will be there's a person that you have that you feel you have more opening to. If you need a professional favor, you can ask a professional for a favor out of that person.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you try to calculate where you're gonna make friends and with what purpose you're gonna make friends, then you're not really making friends.
You're not. But
it creates this army of people that are interested in you only because you are either about to achieve something or because you can achieve something.
And that's exhausting. And I will only speak to my own experiences, but this town is very much who you know. So and the connections you're making. And yes, this is a lesson I'm trying to learn. It comes up in the podcast a lot. It's network, be places, have your face seen, make sure that people know who you are, know what you want, know what you're capable of, so that when they and of course the scenario is always oh, this thing came along, who'd be perfect for that? And I guess maybe that does happen, but sometimes it is people reaching out, people doing each other favors. This town is who you know, people hire their friends,
Yeah, and here's the thing. Here's one thing I noticed, one difference I noticed between the U.S. and Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
America and, in general, Americans are very good at, knowing the game. At, acknowledging that there is a game, that there are rules and moves and steps to be taken and played in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of, seeing things for the steps or the moves that they are or that they may comport somehow.
Yeah.
And that's in a way that's really good. You go, US, do it. That's why you achieve the things you do, because you guys really know how to streamline a process. But that's also that creates this unnatural thing of we know it's about who you know, yes, but if you try to control who you know in this sense, you're not being a really nice person. I don't think there's anything wrong in making contacts out of because of their contacts, because they're professional people that know you in a professional relationship, but you're not really friends. I kind of struggle with this when I see people add in people they know on Facebook and etc. And it's a bit I'm okay with it if we both know this is a professional contact. Please know that I'm not adding you because I want to your son's pictures.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm lucky. I only have Instagram, so I don't have to deal with the Facebook family stuff or because that is personal. I think Instagram is more I don't know. People just put up whatever they want and who they want to identify as and present themselves as, because they call it friends, they call it followers. If you follow each other, then there's some sort of mutual relationship, but it's also through the internet, not really artificial. And I do think that sometimes people are oh, we're friends because we follow each other, but never talked in real life, never have met, and then are asking each other for favors or and that's a whole different category of because now before you would have people's contacts because you would meet them, talk to them, exchange information. Now you can just follow each other, and then that's also a pseudo connection.
And here's one thing, at least from my experience, every time I got a job, I think most of the times, yes, it was through connections, but I don't remember getting a job because because the biggest quality about me was being nice.
Yes.
It was like he's fun to hang out with. Like you should have a beer with him. As far as I remember, like when I got jobs, it was because someone thought I could get that job done. And that's why they recommended me. Sure, like being nice factored in. Like they wouldn't recommend, this guy's a jerk, but he can write your script. Like it was not really like that, but it's like being a nice person, here's who like would do this.
Yeah, because they know that it's going to be a good working relationship, and they also know that you're capable of it. No one wants to, like, I'm sure people do hire their friends because, hey, I know you, but if they can't do what you need them to do, then how useful is that in your project, in your work environment? So it's like, I think that happens. That is probably more common. People hire their friends, but they also know like this person is not like it's more work for you to hire someone that's not going to do the work. You know?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So that's a whole different like. It's like such a but I know people that are super good at it, are constantly networking, making connections, like moving up based on those things. And to me, it just seems exhausting. It seems exhausting to go out all the time. And keep all these connections, follow up with blah, 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 blah. Because I will follow up with friends. I don't know if I'll follow up with. But then, it's that thing I talk about people, like sometimes you meet someone that's on the same frequency as you. So that's a natural friendship that just develops.
But here's what I kind of think that one of the like best advices I've seen thrown around. In that for a while I didn't really know what it meant was the like be yourself advice that seems pretty like vague, but it is actually as like truthful and as helpful as it gets, because if it basically boils down to, if that doesn't feel natural to you, don't do it. For example, for me, it's okay to reach out to like to follow up with like contacts that they're like in that like near friendship area. They're like, this person, it's a writing peer, but you guys are not friends. You don't necessarily like hang out together or etc. But it's good to like check in every once in a while, like grab a coffee, see what they're doing. And it's okay if that's your relationship with them. Like just don't like act like it's your best friend who actually just came back from like, I don't know, Mars or something. It's like, let's hang out. Tell me how you're like all you're doing. Or like, let me like help you with your like life problems, etc. It's okay if you're just like two writing peers checking like in on each other.
That's actually really good advice. I think you just changed my way of thinking about it, because it's a very professional way that I don't think we're ever taught or really practice. Because you either have your friends or you have classmates, you have your coworkers, but it's like it's definitely a professional development tool.
And it's because I think there's a lot of this like this make friends idea, this like make that it should be in a way some kind of like some special relationship. But well, if you can get that is great. But if you don't and you fake it and people see through you, like it's gonna show.
We as humans are pretty smart of when like people are being disingenuous or lying, or people read faces, they read like bodies, they read language, and they're like, what's this person's like hiding.
There's generally why someone likes you or why someone is with you. If like you're like at a coffee or something and you're asking yourself that question, it's probably because something there is not genuine.
And speaking of sort of building relationships and like writers coming together and all this stuff, I did want to ask you about what your thoughts, feelings, experiences with like the WGA.
Amazing. So actually, let me clear things out first. What's my relationship with the WGA? Mm-hmm. I am an associate caucus member in the guild, and which means that I'm not like a current member. I'm not like, let's put it this way, I'm not the 100% member. It's kind of like let's call it a junior membership. But the thing that has been like a blessing about this is that once you get in, you realize I think two things. One, that there's at first you kind of think there's this like invisible barrier between like you and like guild writers, in the sense that it seems that like out of the guild you're like struggling with like everything and try to like find your way and etc. And it seems that everyone in the guild is living in the hills and their pools.
They're working every day, but he's constantly coming in.
Yeah, they have like a streamlined like job line of job offers, and they're like never. And when you get in, you realize that it's kind of like there are people just like you. Like some people do good, some people are like we're struggling here, struggling there. Some people, they have the same like anxieties and etc.
They're still writers.
Yes. And pretty much like I think that would summarize it. Like they're still writers,
Yeah.
But there's like the other thing is that the guild has these committees for to help like underrepresented writers, and they have Latino Writers Committee. That and when you are like an associate caucus member, that's one of like of the best things you can do. Let's say it's one of their best benefits, because it puts you in contact with a lot of other Latino writers, like in different skill levels, and you can see like it's a window into the industry, in the sense that you can see what's going on, what people are going through, and there's also this thing in the community of like, let's help Latinos get let's empower more Latinos, let's help get them like into more rooms, let's help mid-level writers get to like upper level positions. There's a very like strong sense of like not only support but like a planning of like what can we do. Can we do, let's say, showrunner meetings to great people? Like, can we do events that will tell people about this or about that? And you get to know like all these things.
And so how do you become an associate caucus member? So for the people at home.
Okay. There's for like for writers who qualify, that's a great thing, because you don't have to have the full qualification to be a current member, and you can still be a part of a discussion. You can join the discussion. And so if you are the way to get in, I would say first of all is to use Google. But because actually I was not going to say the way to get in. I was going to say the good thing about getting in, about like how to get in this case, is that when you check, if you meet the requirements, it's a lot easier. They have some requirements. That's when I would say like use Google, go to the like WGA website. I can't precise exactly where that is. But in like how to become a member, there's going to be like an information on like I think associate caucus or like an independent caucus, and you can check there. They have some criteria. For example, your work needs, I think, to have placed in a festival or something like that, or you need to have released maybe, let's say, an indie feature or something like that. Or what was my case, for example, you need to have graduated from a list of like from a list of like some institutions, and USC happened to be one of those institutions. So when you get in, you have this this it's like a much lighter membership. I think it's about like $100 a year, and you can do this for 3 years. It's kind of like a window, a hand to help you, like, here's the word, to help you network, to help meet with other people, and maybe taking one of these opportunities the guild offers, you can actually go, full current membership into the guild. And so you have like 3 years to do this. I think that after 3 years it cancels. I'm not really sure. I think that's what I think it's something along those lines.
Okay.
But yeah, that's really like a great opportunity. And
okay, so always good advice. Google it, look at the qualifications, see what you meet, see what you can achieve to meet those goals. That's good. That's good, because I don't think really a ton of people know about it.
And here is one thing about it that I would say, and it also goes into the networking thing. Do it if you want to be a part of things. If you want to, because if you're there just like to take something, people are gonna see that. Due to it is where I think the big moral of this story is that we're all in the same boat together. So be one more person trying to create a community for other writers.
I mean, it is called a union, so
it's not called a union for nothing.
All right, so I did want to ask you to shout out writers, any Latinx writers, heroes, peers, people that you just see from afar and admire, so that the audience at home can know about them, and also so maybe I can interview them as potential guests.
Oh yeah, sure.
So this is the opportunity.
Let me see. First writer, I think top of mind, especially because a disclaimer, she's a friend of mine, Paula Sabaga, fucking genius. She's also a Brazilian writer. I think she writes on Dynasty now, and she came from she was a year, I think, before me on USC, and she's such a nice person who really helps people. And this is one of the context, how to deal with professional relationships. I was talking about, it's not like Paul and I hang out together and etc. But when we talk to each other, it's really a joyful moment, and hey, we had fun, and it flows, and and etc. You don't have to push things to be what they are not. But that said, she's a genius. She just writes so well.
That's good to hear. I love when people are you need to absolutely know about this person because you love their work that much.
It's fun because I like her more after I read her work also. That's
always the best, because it also tells you so much more about them as a person, and it's you're both writers, so you love when you read great writing and you fall in love with them even more.
Yeah, I mean, there's a thing about writing and especially writing for TV, films, writing fiction. Writing is supposed to make you feel something, and if it makes you feel something, it creates in you the sense of gratitude towards the person who wrote it.
And then when you know the person,
and then and then when I read her her work, I was holy shit, I love her. This is so awesome.
I always say, the writers I invite to the podcast are writers I have a crush on, that I admire, that I want the whole world to know about, that I'm please let me do this for you. I want to shout you out. I want to let the people know.
There's Beto Scoobs. He's a sci-fi writer. He's also Brazilian.
All right, cool. Representing Brazil, good.
Yeah, and he writes a lot of dystopian from what I remember, a lot of dystopian stories, and he has like a really good way to get things that we have, like things that we see now that are like issues or that are becoming issues, and he can extrapolate that into how that would actually become a problem in the future. And
and that's a form of like political writing too, to be like,
yes,
that's cool.
And the interesting thing about that is that it takes knowing where the issue is so you don't extrapolate the wrong thing about it.
Yeah.
So otherwise it just feels like too like drama-ish.
Yeah, it's like, oh, that would never happen. But when you point something out that's very true in our society, you're like, oh,
I can see that becoming a thing and none of us realizing until it's too late.
Yeah, that's real. Okay, so I also want people to know where to find you, your social media, any upcoming things they can expect.
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook.
I saw you have no real Twitter presence.
I don't believe in Twitter.
That's I don't either. I only have it for the podcast.
And here's the thing. My God. Okay, let's go on a Twitter rant right now. Guys, you cannot summarize like the world in 140 characters. Simplification is not good. Like, things being simple do not mean things being better. And my thing with Twitter is that becomes it very quickly becomes like a kind of throwing bullets everywhere. Things in which the words are supposed to have like the message gets to become that thing instead of it being a bridge to something bigger. And that's true. Like if you can read something that less than a paragraph and that gives you an emotional like payoff, you're not going to read 1,000 pages of that thing to get the same thing. But you should, because things are complex and it's not about like making them simple but making them accessible to other people. So there's my rant on Twitter. I always thought about like I will maybe join Twitter or like tweet something. Nah. I'm just there to like look at what's happening sometimes. But
Twitter is a lot of hot takes and there's no room for nuance on the internet.
Especially
at 180 characters.
Yes.
But and what's your Instagram handle?
My Instagram handle is G Brugni. That's GBRUGNI. G is in Gabriel, by the way, both times.
Great.
And Bruni is BRUGNI.
Great. So I like to have the guest title their podcast. So the prompt is a blank Latinx writer, and in the blank space, you can move them around. You can add more than one word, but just something that encompasses your story, who you are as a writer, how you identify, just so people can get a sense at home when they see the title and maybe relate to it, see that there are stories that are being represented, and they'll reach out and add to the collective Lista. So
we are probably going to have to go with a Latinx writer that has issues with Twitter.
That is fine. That's good. I'm sure a lot of writers will relate to that. So
yep.
All right. So I'd like to thank you for coming onto the podcast. It was great talking to you.
Thanks a lot. It was really like fun having this.
It's interesting. I definitely took some things away from this conversation that I hadn't even like really thought about or even knew was an experience. So that's what I love about having guests on. You always are learning new things from their experiences, and that will hopefully inform your own and how you go about the world. So
I'm definitely looking forward for the next the next episodes, because it is a big community, and I kind of want to know like how different we are.
Yeah, it is shocking. So, and thank you again for contributing to that, because